Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone to this very, very special little webinar we're putting together. So as everyone's loaded in, I want to welcome Natalie once again to the show. Natalie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Andrew. Thank you for having me. It's good to be back. And an amazing year so far, hasn't it been?
Amazing. And we are going to be talking about the solstice and the equinox. 1 year later, we are at our next process of solstice and equinox. And the previous recordings that everyone that has watched has earned a tremendous amount of information, from the supermoon to what fraud time is to how photonic beings of light find balance in the different forms of the passing of the seasons and the movements of the stars. Natalie, I got a question for you. How has the equinox been for you this year?
Well, for me, it's been really interesting. There's been a lot of understandings about looking into where you may have weaknesses and where you need to strengthen yourself. So for me, the equinox is things that I didn't really want to look at, that I knew I had to look at, had to take care of. And so I felt that the energies were quite intense. They were quite up and down. And great learning was to be had. It's also about how you want to see it. It's about the perspective. And so all those teachings that you've been giving us about perspectives, I've taken everything that Great Mystery has been showing me with this equinox and shed light on and equaled out. And I've been taking that to use as a training for the perspectives and how to then give an algorithm that will bring everything forward rather than, get myself down about it.
Very good. And for everyone that's beginning to join in now, this is going to be a Q&A about the solstice and the equinox. So down below, there is a place where you can put in your comments, and then it'll stack on one above the other, and we're going to start taking the best questions. So this is for questions about the solstice and the equinox. All of the videos that you guys have watched and have been wanting special process questions on that. So we are going to be talking a little bit more, and then we're going to get right into the Q&A, because that is the purpose of this webinar. So Nat, I want to share something. We have all had our trials and tribulations over the last 3 years. And what I've noticed, that this particular equinox has been one of the most harshly grounding ones I've seen in a very long time.
You think?
Oh yeah. For those that didn't think they had a cord attached back to them, they reached a certain point and they hit that wall and they got pulled right back, as if they could go no further. And there's a reason why. To achieve balance is the greatest and the least must find that balance. You have the two opposite ends here. So for many of those that are out in front of the ascension movement, they're finding themselves hitting these walls and can go no further. This is where they must look within and understand that now they are the teacher, and the teacher is a healer, and the healer is a motivator and a facilitator to go back to this other end for those that have their wall so far back in scale, so that they can have their frequency upraised, so that those at the front of the line can go to whole new levels of experimentation and understanding. There are things in this universe that have happened. And oftentimes, as the galactic historian, I give an expose of what's been going on in the presence of now. And this last equinox was not an actually pleasant one for the system of domination and control. Many aspects of their control systems were removed in a very unique way. Example: the vast majority of the archons have had the majority of their power removed to create and use false light technology. They can only function strictly with those that are in the government right now. Any of the 170 plus corporate governments that are out there that are all following that system of exchanging in debt. So whole new sets of rules are being created, and whole new neutral beings are being brought into an astral world vacuum. And this particular vacuum is going to be filled in with the next group of beings who are going to be incarnated on our world. So this spring is the time of birth, and that time of birth is going to give time to new birth and new birth. And this is where the womb chakras begin to open up on Earth. For many years, I've been asked about the womb chakras and how they function and how they work. Well, for those of you that are within a few hundred kilometers of one or two or three, you will begin to discover life grows very fast. That life, which you thought was not there, is suddenly, instantly returned. And many of this will be bypassing a birthing process. The deers will suddenly repopulate, the beaver, the bear. They will have their connection to their ancestral homelands within inside the hollow earth, the place where our ancestors in extinction are waiting for their time to return to the surface in equal co-creation in time here, so that we can come together as a species that is the 8-color experiencing time. We have this unique moment, and these passings of the last few days of the system of domination and control, some of you want to have your popcorn and watch it. My advice to you is don't. It's not going to be what you thought it was. It's going to be a falling away in the most awkward of ways. This is where you, in your ceremonies and rituals for the solstice and the equinox and the solstice repeated over this next process of the year, is where you can ground deep into yourself, ground deep into your soul, and have the next layer of universal soul shards be reintegrated into you. What are universal soul shards? Over the last few months, you have been hearing me talk about celestial mediums. This is the last group of immigrants that came between the 1990s and the early 2000s. This is when the system of domination and control was beyond America Online, and it was really able to search the internet and employ its esoteric rituals. This group of children are the ones that really get to change something. And it's only from their perspective that they create a total change, because these are beings of unity. Our next layer of human beings that are coming to us are going to pale in comparison. Kids that are 1 and 2 now, in a month from now, might have the consciousness of a 30-year-old in them, or a 7-year-old, or a 4-year-old who all of a sudden can speak 7 languages for an hour or 2. This is the type of reorganization that's going on in the astral world. And this last equinox was to achieve balance. So the highest forms of negativity have been chopped down and removed from our astral incarnation system. So Natalie, I want to ask you a question about what's going on in the energy frequencies for the last, let's say, 10 days. You know, off air, you and I have had many, many comments how it compared to the year before.
Yeah, it's been really different. It's been intense, but I wouldn't want to. I really don't want to call it negative, because it's not, and I really don't want to call it positive, because it's not that either. It's like you're saying. It's about getting these 8 colors of time to be shown through. When we were talking about how it feels, how people are reacting, how things are moving, just even looking at sometimes how the clouds are moving and the birds were moving and how the sun was setting, everything just seemed off. It just seemed, but not off in a bad way, just this isn't normally how the system would have set it up. Do you see what I mean? And where there was a weakness, it was shown really, really clearly, but where there was a strength, that was also emanated really, really clearly. Like, I've had some of the most incredible things happening where I just turn around and there's so much joy flowing through me. And then I've borne witness to other things where I'm looking and I understand, and it is sad, but it is made very clear to me how this happened. And so I truly believe that even though people are seeing things that they are finding difficult, it's a lot easier to be able to trace back how it became that way. Things seem to be less convoluted. Like you said, there's been a cutting down of those ways that people's perceptions can get blocked. It's almost like there's new ways of looking at things. There's new feelings coming through. I want to say it's us coming back to what is known as true nature, the truth in nature, true nature. But this is something that's other because it's never really happened before, has it, Andrew?
No, it hasn't happened in this format. Something similar to this has happened on other worlds and other galaxies, but not in this scale, not in this size, not in this form of understanding, not with this level of spiritual migrations, and not with any other level of understanding compared to those that tried before and didn't succeed in creating what we have here, a system to resolve karma at the universal scale, and then ultimately to remove karma from our form of incarnating process. So there's no longer a reincarnation system, but everything integrated into the incarnating system. So soul shards do not get stuck outside of time. You know, the last webinar, the last event, we talked about time and fraud time, and we really tried to hammer home how important that when you make your sacred time is no time. And there are many people that are having a hard chance at really understanding fraud time. So Natalie, what are your looks on fraud time and the way you've experienced it?
Fraud time. When I am fixed to a certain time when I'm having to make something better, if an owner comes to me with a horse and says, you have 3 days to fix this horse, I've got 3 days in fraud time. To me, when you learn to work within that, and you've learned to work within that and without that for quite a while, you start to be able to get time so that 1 minute can seem like eternity. And what I've been noticing with the fraud time is that it's getting a lot easier to download all that I want to download in those moments than it used to be. Do you see what I'm trying to say? Sometimes I used to have to really fight, and I'm like, wow, you know, it's coming, but you know, I've got it, but it's not quite. And I really can feel it, because I'll start to feel something change in my body. It's almost like I can't explain it, but I'll start to feel something different in my body once I get these understandings, once I've really gleaned it, once I've really got that aha moment. And what I'm finding is I'm getting moments where it feels like centuries of wisdom is just coming through that one question. And it's only been like 30 seconds where I could have sworn it's been 3 hours. Do you see what I mean?
Oh, exactly.
And this is becoming more and more apparent in this time frame right now.
Yeah, in my private sessions, I've been experiencing that more and more and more, to the point where I've had to change the entire grid system where I do my private sessions, because time is either compressed for some people or very elongated for others. And there are times that I start with a person in the morning that has super elongated time, and I end with somebody that is super short time, and then my little bubble of reality here gets heavily affected, and the grid that I set up has specific rules. And I've found myself having to change the rules for my reality around me, because things are changing that fast. And when I speak of sovereignty, that's the responsibility of the continuous upkeep of the creation and co-creation that's around you. For my particular thing, it's to do radio shows, to do private sessions, to do so on and so forth, all the things that go on from the broadcast center. Grids are one of those things you just have to put your yearly effort into. And this past equinox for me was about reinventing the grid that was here, because it was a person from a year ago that created that grid in a whole different environment. And this next grid is helping me, the individual person, create a third layer of separation of densities, where the projections from others that are, let's just say, otherworldly, have a different rule of reality, where I'm not going to be using specifically a spiritual court of equity, but I'm going to be using a universal court of equity. So anything that is an off-world perception or deception, or whatever it is that you want to put it, for me, from this point forward and backwards in all time, I'm changing the soul-based perspective that anything that's not this lineage based from this DNA frequency of time goes to a universal court. And that universal cord is resolving things instantly and continuing the hologram that moves forward.
And I think well, I've seen you doing this whilst you've been doing it, and I've seen the changes that it's made. And that's another thing. It's all about perspective and how you view time and how you measure it and for what it gives you in that perspective. Is it a coordinate where you meet someone, or is it something that rules your day and in 8 hours I can leave my office, sort of thing? How is time ruling you, and how are you ruling time? But what I've really noticed as well is that there's so much magic that's now being able to become manifest. As fraud time is becoming less imprinted on us, everything is becoming more malleable, which means we can reset things to the radiant blueprint. We can reset things back to the 0 point. We can help unwind what the ravishes of time, so to say, has done. There is also the other side of that, because there is always the other side. Again, there is no good, no bad. That's just how the frequencies are running right now. We're in the cycle, this new cycle. And in this new cycle, we've got frequencies that are very malleable. We've got frequencies that provide great power. And this is what people are seeing, things where there is a weakness. You will see a weakness become really in your face, manifest. But where there is strength, you can really make magic. And that is incredibly encouraging. And where it is the part that you have to take care of it, I would call that motivating. And this is why these times are so exciting.
Oh, yeah, it's very exciting. So in the process of resetting my grid is where I discovered, let's just say, a whole new way to bring the same perspective out. And what's going to be coming up this next solstice, we just finished our equinox, this next solstice is going to be something uniquely special for those that are ready to do dream journeying. There's going to be a continuing broadcast on dream journeying as part of the Akashic broadcast that will be coming up on Thursday the 31st and April the 4th, both in 2016. And these will be about updates of what's coming into the Akashic frequency and what people need to do and prepare, so that when the solstice comes and you're ready to do your dream journeying, you've created your estate and your fortress of energy around you. This is what is all the those meditation and creation systems are about. So for those of you who have done your equinox and solstice ceremonies, and if you're listening and you haven't, you still have time to go and do your equinox ceremony so you can be prepared for the solstice that is coming up. It's important that you begin to truly try and to record as much about these times as possible. Many times you've heard me say, if you're not journaling, you're faking it. And I'm serious about that. You have to learn how to allow some of the natural mechanisms within your body to say, hey, you have to do this, or hey, you have to do this, and you got to find a fun way to do it, not to just sit there and write, day one I did this, 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 with no true emotion behind it. When you get your authentic self writing to the authentic self, at some ancient future point, you have master's hindsight, which gives immediate foresight. Understanding this solstice about coming up is the lesson of foresight. This last message from the equinox was hindsight. What it took for you to get there, now it's going to take what is it going to take for you to get there and beyond. Because on that day, those that are truly ready to have their dream seeing communication and have gone through the different processes are going to find themselves at a whole new level of understanding of how this reality works.
Now, also, what I'd like to add to that is that when we hear Andy talk, he's got these amazing understandings that come through, and we take every word literally. And also when he says on that day, if you are not consciously aware of what's happening on that day, because so much is happening on that day, just know that when you do the ceremonies, it will constantly be serving you. Like sometimes only 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 days later will you get a realization of something that is a gift from that ceremony. So if there are some things that you're working on that don't happen on that day, just know that it has begun. And just know that sometimes when it's really big things, for the consciousness living in this moment of now, it sometimes takes a while for the sympathetic and the parasympathetic and the DNA technology to really allow the consciousness in the body to experience it. Even though the work has begun on all the different levels of the light body, sometimes it's actually physically those understandings being allowed to come through in the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, because you're thinking on that day it's ceremony, oh my God, it's got to happen on that day. Most of the time, lots of big things happen, yes, but it's like a gradual thing. It's like a trickling of water that just brings in a little bit more sparkle, a little bit more sunlight. You know what I'm saying? Every time it has that reflection when you view it. So this is really important to know that it will always be a process. And sometimes you'll get huge waves and surges, and sometimes it will be like a down cycle, and you'll just get a little bit here, a little bit there, or you'll just be at a standstill. Just know that these are all cycles. So if it's not on that day, please do not let the system get you caught up on fraud time saying it's got to be on that day. And that's where, I love what Andrew says about fraud time and when you're in your place of no time, because you can always go back to that moment of no time and be in that time of no time, regardless of the date. And this is something that is really, really important. When you've done those ceremonies, if it didn't come for you at that moment, you can go back to that moment and still have something happening weeks, days, months, and sometimes when you're reverting back to it in your journals, years after, with the hindsight and then the foresight for the next level.
And that's right, the foresight for the next level. So really get out there and journal. Understand what it takes to tell your story to the fire, and then go beyond that. Find a way to create the spark of energy so the fuel inside you is co-creating with that fire, so that a continuous creation is there. It will be your responsibility to upkeep that continuous creation. This is how we are able to suspend conversations in time, so we can go back into the body, do our daily things, and have our next moment where we can go back to continue that train of consciousness creation. You have that power in you. This next level of understanding what's coming for us is going to be schedule management for those that want to have the spiritual experiences, the mystical connection, so they can fully prepare themselves for the dreaming moment that's going to be September 21st to September 23rd, June 21st to June 23rd this year. The most amount of light's going to be coming in. And at the same time, the surface beings that are in charge are going to be beating their chest like cavemen want to control. We just have to ignore the cavemen, go into our sacred ceremonies, put up our sacred walls, take time to listen to the guided meditations that are coming up in the Akashic broadcast that teach you how to make an estate of energy that's around you, that teaches you how to create your journey to this mystical sacred mountain within yourself in your own co-creation, ultimately recorded into your own voice. There are many things that are coming for those that are ready to make a jump into the dream world. And I mean a jump. This is going to be going from the little tricycle to the moped. That is the level of jump that is coming for those that are prepared for this June.
And that's why it's so exciting. Like, you were talking about these incredible, immense, powerful energies we're experiencing with this equinox. And you can feel we're getting ready. It's preparing us for what's yet to come. It's just laying another line, a code for us to look at and to integrate and to see how we can, use these gifts that are coming our way, use this malleability that is becoming made manifest yet again. And it gets very exciting when you talk about those people being able to make those steps. And it's sometimes when you're so conscious of yourself, you're always very conscious of how everything's feeling. And when moments like these are coming, it's always fascinating to be conscious of what is within you, and then start to look at nature around you and see how nature is responding with you and to you. If it's the way the trees and the wind is blowing, and then you just notice a slight shift, or you see something, or if it's your house cat doing something, start to look at how your electrical field is engaging with the electrical field of other living things. around you. And you'll start to see some coincidences, but there is no coincidence. You'll start to see some things happening because the malleability is such that we're starting to become more and more aware of our connectedness. We are all connected, we know this, but we are starting to become more and more aware of our connectiveness. And this is really exciting. So when you're doing those great works, when you're thinking about something, when you're doing something like the magic fire, you're doing the ceremony, and you're taking that time to do it, those thoughts, look how fire responds, look how wind responds. Do you hear anything else? What are those cracklings like? What is there a lot of smoke? You know, all these different things. And how is the fire responding to your thought process? How are you responding to even lighting that fire? Will your fire light? How did you prepare everything?
Do the crickets chirp when you're talking and stop when you're not? Do they have a message in your own conversation? The various things that are around you, the ducks, the hawks, all of those things are not coincidence.
And this is the fun stuff, because I'm telling you another thing, and this is I've been laughing and I've been actually testing this like the last, and this happens to a lot of people, but it's just becoming so obvious now, is that we will be talking about something, and if there's a television series or something playing in the background, they will actually use words relevant to what we've been talking about, like
conversations. Yep.
And every subject you can imagine, from, I don't know, from dog bones to suicide to a color of a rose. I mean, it was just amazing. And we've been doing this more and more and more. And I know it's been happening with you guys out there. And, you know, those are just fun things to look at and note down. And you'll start to see the regularity of it. And then when you start to see it, you're going to start to play with it. And when you start to play with it, you'll start to get even more codes. And then, oh, everything becomes even more malleable. And then you get the joy, then you get that joy, that surge, that, you know, this is a really good time to be alive.
Exactly. So for everyone, this is an interactive webinar, so please go ahead just below the video screen, go ahead and enter your questions there, and we will make a big list and we'll pull off from the questions.
Okay, so we do have some questions, Andrew. Do you want me to start with the questions now?
Sure, let's start with the questions.
Okay, we have a question from Steve Womack. He said, I made a fire with pressure-treated lumber wood. How does this treated lumber affect the power of fire?
Well, you should never be actually burning pressure-treated wood because it has a strychnine in it. First thing first. So you did it. It's okay. There are some other forms of pressure-treated wood that don't use strychnine, but if it's green and it's like really moist and wet and pressure-treated, it's got some form of advanced preservative agent that makes it burn very nasty. What can you do? How does it change it? It changes it a lot because you are creating a lot different density of smoke. So if you have dense wood that needs to be burned, you need to burn it in the proper way, where you need to have super, super, super hot coals before you put that wood on it. So coals that have been ceremonially tended, and let's say you have a piece of nastiness that's taken from a house that was haunted, and you need to get rid of that energies, and that's your form of transmutation, and it happens to be that piece of pressure-treated wood is what you're going to burn. Then the hotter the coals, the more sacred time that's been on them, so that as soon as it goes on, all of the energy around it immediately burns up, and then people around that should simply sage towards the fire, because whatever energy is on there is going to try to get away from that fire. And dense energy oftentimes has, let's just say, a residual intelligence of all the different beings that have worked there or worked around that energy or have had their energy a part of that frequency. And it's a survival mechanism for it to try to go on. So,
wow, that's pretty interesting. That you know, that's a fascinating concept to look at. So great question there.
At the same time, if his prayers were powerful enough and he understood it was pressure-treated wood, he's still doing a good fire because he's now deciding to use that pressure-treated wood to do something with it. Is he creating an emission that's harmful? In that volume, depending on the size of the fire, more than likely he's not affecting anything major. You know, we constantly want to do no harm, but there are times in that fine line between doing no harm and harm where you can use the power of your prayers to make sure that's a transformative fire.
Okay, so
Effective.
so it's basically then you're talking the consciousness that was also behind it, you know, the intent. And it was in love, it was to heal, it was for prayers. That's what he had there. And, you know, therefore the magic was still available, right?
Right. The
Okay.
magic was still there.
Okay. So
It,
we have the second question from Akiko Fliss.
sure.
I would love to learn ritual and ceremony that we can do to receive the energy from sun. Oh yeah, that's awesome. Oh, and ground ourselves so that we can have ancestral visitation and greet future generations. If you can expand the practical rituals and mechanical process.
Yes.
Yeah, nice, awesome question.
Makiko was part of one of our special Akashic mentoring programs that we had that was going on, and she's an incredible question asker. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So you want to connect to your 7 future generations, you want to have soul family reunions, and you want to manifest that between now and what's coming up on June the 21st to the 23rd. This is where you have to build the ground skills so that you can have some form of awareness in your actual dream time of the I am presence. The dream time is a vehicle where part of our consciousness enters it, which is our higher soul that's attached to our soul purpose and goes off and does stuff. The I am presence takes a break every now and then and just actually goes to sleep. And then there are times the I am presence says, no, I have to be a part of the dream world. Many people disconnect this process. To connect to your ancestral visitations, to have the 7 future generations in your dream frequency means you must be connected to the dreaming vehicle, and how this mind, as we're going back into sleep, goes into the heart, and then the heart also goes into the intestinal tract. The intestinal tract is where your dreaming body exists. When you started as a fetus in the womb, you did not have arms and legs and a head. You were just a heart. Just a little itty bitty tiny heart. So for Mikiko, as specifics, this is where you have to create with your own voice a guided meditation that takes you to sleep, so that your mind enters your heart enters your intestinal tract, your mind then enters the heart inside your intestinal tract and becomes the dreaming vehicle. This is the guided meditation and imagery that we need to create within our own third eye when our eyes are closed, so that we can be a part of the continuing co-creation. The next level is, where do you go when you're in the dreaming vehicle? This is where many, many adepts get caught up. This is the next level of the teaching. You have fraud time and you have no time. Your guided meditation, that's the second track that you would create for yourself, is you are in no time and you have complete control over your X and Y axis. And this is where you create imagery of a home, a house, a castle, something that you build with your own 2 hands inside your mind. And this will be your launch point or invitation point, so ancestral family reunions can happen in the past, in the present, or in the future. Oftentimes, to have the 7 future generations to truly work with you, you need to go into the future dream. So you need to guide yourself into future dream space. The generations, 3 generations from now, 2 generations from now, those people physically exist. And you can dream in unity and community with them. You can offer them to have visitation, or they can offer you to come and visit them in dream time. And they are in unity and have many skills available to assist us in understanding what's going on over there. You just have to give it the time, the effort, and the energy, the creation, the co-creation, and the responsibility to record as much as you can. Because it'll come in little forms of synopsis, here, there. This will connect to this, that will connect to that, and you'll have 3 dreams in a row that give you the big picture. And then it'll be many weeks or many days or hours or months or years until your next one. This is where the next level of preparation is required, where you know the inner skills of what it takes to create your dream world, go from the mind into the heart, into the intestinal tract, create the dreaming vehicle, go to the created spaces, and then begin to commune with other ancestral beings in spiritual courts of equity or astral cities. Is dreaming a place in astral projection different? The answer is yes and no. It is going to be perspective, but there are different methods that the energy bodies have to sort information. And there are certain people at certain levels that use certain forms of their light body to perceive information. One is not any better than the other. Each is going on. So you have to choose what skills you want to manifest. I know that was a quick one. So Nat, we got a bunch of other questions there. So people who want to know more about that, stay tuned to the Akashic broadcasts that are going to be Thursday, April the 31st, and Monday, April the 4th, right after the radio show, where it'll be a continuing process of how to create the estate. So what's the next question, Nat? You might be muted. No.
Yes, I was just saying there are so many questions, and that question was so multidimensional, multi-layered, and to give it its full concept, you did amazing, and one could still answer that for about 15 more minutes and still get amazing stuff out of it. The next question is from Maria Gill. First, thank you for all you do, Andrew. Now I'm having a very hard time trying to get to the right Dreamtime location each night. Please re-summarize the steps for accomplishing that. And that was cool because you already touched on that a little bit just now with Makiko's answer.
Okay, so in the one she's referring to, it's from a different question from the actual solstice event. There are many different techniques that I've talked about at how to enter the dream world. The dream world can be you telling yourself you want to dream, and then you dream. The dream world can be what's already set in stone that your higher self is doing when you're asleep and your I am presence is not doing anything. Oftentimes our I am presence stay asleep for half the day, and then they wake up inside ourselves, and when the body's ready to go to sleep, they're not ready to go to sleep, and then they create some form of ego dreams. To get into the true dream format is where you got to try to unify the left brain and the right brain and the right brain and the left brain, and to create a swirling pattern of energy that interconnects the left brain and the right brain, that allows the eyes to close, the third eye is to close, and that the brain literally starts to go into the heart. That's the form of guided meditation, whether it's you doing this into your own self and creating the imagery of literally seeing the brain go into the heart until it bonds and there's two little eyes looking at the heart and you're closing your eyes and you're ready to go to sleep. That is the proper spiritual and mechanical way to fall asleep. If the heart naturally sends your I am presence to the dreaming body, that means it's already been in tune with the higher soul. Like I said before, the higher soul has got it all planned out. The I am presence is just there to create contrast so the higher soul and the I am presence can learn deeply from the colored experiences that are going on. And the I am presence can make a choice at any time to stop the plan of the higher self and completely make new routes. That's the whole point of the sovereign free will. This is why some form of deeper understanding of the mechanics of going to sleep, so that when we wake up in the dreaming vehicle, we get to go, all right, the higher self is trying to show me something. Those dreams that you found yourself, almost like a leash, something's pulling you very fast, that's because the higher self is trying to update you as fast as you can on all the stuff you've missed while the I am presence has been asleep.
That's beautiful.
Thank you. So what's the next question?
Your greatest fan here. I'm just sitting here going, wow, that was amazingly answered. Hang on. Okay, so I will go to Sandra Finkel. She says, Andrew has often suggested that we create our own ritual practices and make everyday life sacred. Can you elaborate more about this and discuss certain ritual elements you may want to include?
Okay, well, anything that has to do with the passing of the seasons or the movement of the stars is what you want to take your first sets of imprint at. You should go right away to a lunar calendar and begin to align yourself to the lunar cycles. If you are near ocean, you need to align yourself to high tide. Those are the first few layers of rituals, that's ritualistic and ceremonies that need to be a part of your everyday life, because the energy in the ocean is always going up and down based off of the rise and fall of the ocean as well as the rise and fall of the moon. So if you are nowhere near the ocean, do you need to align to high tide or low tide? No. You can do it for extra credit if you want. The next layer is weather. So many people don't like to watch television or the news, but you at least need to go and look at the radar that's in your general area so that you can begin to activate your foresight to think about what's in the sky and the stars and what's going on there so you can align your rituals to no rainfall or rainfall. The next layer there is deep under the ground, we have nexus points that constantly erupt energy. And in certain areas, during certain weather patterns, you have lightning strikes. So if there any form of thunder and lightning coming, there is an opportune time to do a ritual or a ceremony. Does it need to be fire outdoors welcoming the storm in? Some people go ahead and do that. I have done those. I've drummed storms in, but at the same time you have to have a conscious mind and understand, there's a lot of energy out there, and when you work with those types of energies in ritual and ceremony, it repays you many fold. Other times when there are floods, the spring floods are very rejuvenating for the land before and after. You can go and do your rituals and ceremonies according to the basis of the floods. It has been imprinted you in lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. Whenever the spring floods came, you planted right away. And if you did, you had a fertile crop and you lived to the next year. There are hundreds of different types of timings and descriptions that I can give, but it's going to require what gives you the most happiness. Some people just like to go to the beach every day, and that's their particular ritual ceremony they do when they walk their 2 miles, or others go and actually do the fire. You have to make it sacred so that there's a smile on your face, that you know you're paying the energy forward so that the energy repays you manyfold. That's the nature of the conscious application of the sacred, removing the recreational concept from its interexchanging.
Yes, yes, exactly. Next question from Kathleen Ring. Has this equinox been so impactful because of the natural precession of the equinox, or because of the audit, or other?
This has been difficult because there are a lot of beings who don't want to wake up. You have to think of it as a bunch of very adult beings who are late for school. The bus is down the road. You're not awake yet. You're not dressed yet. You're still asleep. Your mom's knocking on your door telling you to get up, and you're like, nah, I'm not getting up. That's why it's been so tough.
So it's almost like the root, he who does not hear must feel sort of thing that's happening right now, where it's getting so tough.
Pretty much, yes. Pretty much, yes. And there are a number of things being radically neutralized in our environment. Um, Certain swaths of soul families were controlled by certain types of mind control technology in the 70s. That technology was removed from the 70s as if it never existed, and therefore they're not in control anymore, but they haven't removed the imprint from the person that has it from the 70s still, or they're getting over the habit patterns. This is why a lot of people are finding themselves coming to a ritual and ceremony, because it's a natural clearing frequency that allows you to go, wow, this is the real me, not the illusion I was living in.
Right.
Right.
And what I
And what
have
I
here
have
is
here is
from
from
Steve Womack again. Great questions here. Fire is elemental of earth and empowers our experience here. Will fire also assist in galactic communications with other ones like Syrians, for example, etc.,
yes,
or our off-world ancestry?
Yes. So if one is going to create a fire for the express purpose of connecting to galactic consciousness, Syrian sentience, whatever it is, the fire is the medium of communication. The first things that I tried to teach was to tell your own story, so that when that fire becomes sacred with you, and each time you create with that element of fire, if something else comes into your fire, the fire is your reflection, and through that reflection there's a smoke that allows you to communicate to whatever it is that's going to try to communicate to your reflection. So yes, you can have very powerful connections to off-world sentience and entities. It's the sacred protection that you put around it so that you can have multidimensional communication, because when you leave that fire, those particular beings are still going to be able to communicate to you through that fire, because that fire is a floating 0 point frequency of time that allows them to communicate to you as unentangled observers.
And that's a real key point there that you've just pointed out. And for those that obviously watched what we were doing when we did the solstice ceremony and we filmed that ceremony, is that you made very sure to make it clear that that was a no time zero
Right.
point. That was a no time event. We had everything laid out, all the tools, everything, said the words. And that's still the work that was done there has proven to be such a fundamental basis of everything that we've done after that. Do you see what I mean? It's just been, really adding more. So we've had that floating 0 point, which has added another algorithm, which has added another algorithm.
Right.
Very powerful. Okay, so now from Moji Nagipur, I hope I pronounced that right. I have been experiencing and seeing the breaking of the timelines. They are being segmented where you can see the programming of each grid. From breaking away of the timelines, it allows me to see and step into the current high dimensional realms. Can you share anything about that, Andrew?
Well, she's right on.
I know, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it, I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, this is good.
Yes. Rolling pins, flattening, pulling out. It's they're taking the hairball apart. Best way to describe it. And when you get to those higher realms and dimensions, there is so much context that you need to know to understand what you're seeing in a pinpoint of light. So what is going on there? A whole bunch of really cool beings from all over this universe and many other universes have assembled here and created a time decoder. It's the best way to describe it. Every false timeline that's ever been created has been given an encoded number, and they've got this psychic decoding decryption machine that they're floating all time into, and everything comes out decoded now. So everything can be looked at for its actual exchange of energy value for that moment of time. So they are going to basically find the actual numbers on all of fraud time. And thus there is a full accounting of all exchange. And if there's a full accounting of all exchange, it can be reversed. So that's what's going on in those other realms. They're figuring out how to reverse everything that was created and uncreated.
And then being the conscious observer of that in this timeline of now, in that DNA technology, just being the consciousness observers that has brought that back down to the 0 point and has created a radiating pathway for all others, for their algorithms to release that. And again, come back to the radiant blueprint, their 0 point, their authentic signature frequency, their authentic signature frequency function. Massive.
And for Moji, you have to know you're on that pinnacle. You're like one of those people that I just described before that's reached it. You got to wait for everyone else to catch up, but that doesn't mean you can't have great and colorful experiences. It means you can. You just have to be willing to push your own psychic envelopes and stay protected while you're doing it. Because there are some great things that beings that are at the highest levels of consciousness exploring can do. They can begin talking to other celestial minds, other celestial entities, and begin on a mass of people who want to come here for soul family migration. It is essentially turning on the soul family homing beacon. Or in the movie of Lord of the Rings, where they lit the fire at the tower, and mountain after mountain after mountain after mountain lit their fire. We can do this exact same thing here. And this has been done in our time in previous histories. It's about how strong and how powerful and how interconnected with Source the voice is the matter of how far it echoes through all universal expressions.
And what is also really relevant is when you're doing this is that you have sorry, I've got just people talking in the background here, sorry. So what happens is when you're doing this is that you always endeavor to stay really, really, really grounded. And when it feels in any way too much, or you don't have an absolute feeling of unconditional love surrounding you, then just disengage. This is key because it's very, very powerful stuff. So really feel grounded and really feel unconditional love. And if it doesn't feel like that, then go back to your grounding and just allow again. And make sure that every kind of interaction you have, you always have those incredible feelings of unconditional love when you're working with this kind of, shall we say, galactic energies. Right, Andrew?
That's right. So let's go to the next question. I understand we've got a whole bunch of questions here.
So one moment. Okay, so this is interesting. This is from Vanya Luminous Mountain. I have been listening to you for a couple of months now, and I'm wondering if you can provide a synopsis or list of what you feel the best tips are for someone to prepare for the equinox and solstice events. There seems to be so much to know and do, and I'm still trying to grasp it all. Yeah, it is a lot.
First thing first, set a day on your calendar. That's the most important. If you haven't done, we'll do it from this synopsis. Let's say you've watched the videos, but you haven't done your ceremony. Just because the equinox is past doesn't mean you can't connect into the energies. You can, and it's your entitled duty as part of a no-time being. So put it on your calendar. And let's say you're going to do it next Tuesday at 8 o'clock at night. Well, that gives you that amount of time to assemble and prepare for the day. So assembling is wood, lighter fluid, cardboard, paper, a chair, something to drink, telling everyone that's around you to leave you alone for a couple hours, bringing something next to the fire that can help you remember your memories, like a picture book, or if you're going to use your cell phone, baby pictures, so on and so forth, that'll remind you of who you are, what you've done. That's your pre-assembly. Contract revocations, print them out. Once you've printed them out, you can read it to the wood, the fire, all of the things that you're going to bring with you, so that they are protected by the I Am Presence, who's not even in the ceremony yet. Because you've decided to make the ceremony sacred, means you do your due diligence first. The stuff that's going with you has the prayers over it. Not just a Dominus Ominous be blessed and walk away. No, it doesn't work that way. You need to give it authentic self-energy. The truth. Some people have a tough time just reading the contract revocations to a group of objects. If you do, you have to find another way to connect to them. That gives a prayer that says these objects are sacred. No other exterior energy can contract with these inanimate or animate objects and be a part of my ceremony, because I am making it my own personal no-time ceremony. The day of the ceremony. You've reiterated your words to the people that live around you to give you your free time. You get out there, check the weather. Okay? If you're doing it indoors, you're fine. You start that fire, and you read the contract revocations to open the ceremony. That should take about 35 minutes to read the 5. And from that point, you want to get close to the fire, allow it to warm you up, and start to tell your story. Use your picture book and all the things that you brought with you that would occupy your 2-3 hours of attempting to have a fire and making something sacred for a few hours. Now, when it comes to the solstice and the equinox, just by having it on the date of that date and time, you have given yourself the extra credit to have deeper forms of energy. Even if you're not on the date, you'll still get the deeper forms of energy, just at a different pace of time. This is where you make your dedication to yourself to be disciplined enough to have more and more story to return to the fire in other ceremonies. Other things that you do, there are certain passages of books that are so important to you that reading it in front of the fire makes an exchange of energy. There are poetry that you might have created. Share that with the fire because it is an exchange of energy. When the ceremony is nearing its halfway point and you know that you're going to be going, make sure you never leave that ceremony open. That when you close it, it's done. That you don't act like a 9-year-old who's lost their way because their attention span's only 6 minutes long. You have to have respect for that fire. Does that mean you can't leave it at all? No, it means if you're going to leave it, you give it a message to make sure it remains sacred, that you're going to the bathroom, run into the house to grab something to drink and come right back. If you leave it and get on your cell phone and walk away and come back 45 minutes later to see if it's burning, you have disrespected that sacred fire. Thus, you must learn why you disrespected it and what energies pushed you away. Something else for people to do at the fire is watch their own body not respond to what they want. Their own body looking at their cell phone, playing with this, getting up and walking away, and suddenly the mind going, no, this is a sacred fire. All those things are levels of observance to do during these sacred fires. So the I am presence is centered in the self and in control of all versions of the self. That was a long one. But basically, those are the things you need to do when you're coming to a ceremony if you've never done it before. Prepare, day of, open the ceremony, midway through the ceremony, and make sure you close the ceremony. Can this all be done in an hour? Some people get that effective, and other people just want to have it a 5-hour scenic fire where it's not all about the spirituality. It's just about the protected bubble of energy.
Yeah, that was a beautiful synopsis. Thank you, Andrew. That was really powerful. I've got a question here from Traveling Busboy. What are some of the ways the 66 other planets are affecting each individuation in the shared holographic reality?
Interesting question.
Yes.
Good question. So Jupiter and Saturn and Mars and all the male planets. Let's just put it all the male planets and the bisexual planets and the trisexual. Hold on. So all the male planets that are solely male with no other attachment or iteration. So the strictly male planets, they are the ones that are driving the, let's just say, the galactic ascension machine forward with their celestial adrenal gland energy. It is what's keeping the spiritual commerce of the reincarnation grid going, so that everyone has enough gusto that wanted to get here into the end time got here before the tap is turned off and nothing else from that immigration path can go through. It all comes from a different source. Does that make sense?
That was well described, but very multidimensional.
Well, when you're asking these big questions, sometimes if you know the context, there's a simple answer. And for this next layer of understanding, how do I put this? Again, I can't even begin to describe it. It's too hard sometimes, and that's a good question. It's just sometimes too hard to put into English, and that isn't just compacted enough so that if you know the context, that what that is will make full sense.
Okay, well, we all understand on some level light language. So why don't you just answer it really briefly in light language so that we've got the answer on one perspective that we've all understood, if that's possible.
All right, so read the question again.
Okay. What are some of the ways the 66 other planets are affecting each individuation in the shared holographic reality?
Tato yita tata china makam nina cha mata chawa cha chita watata cha tanoko chi tatana chawa tatan tana tada wantan tam kachatino to uyi tatacha karantana charshumokata china cha 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 wuntana chaka chanati yatata kana chumata Unyatechak Chatachane Chumamushtana. That's it.
Thank you. Well, that was awesome. Okay, I've got a next question from Laura Larson. Laura Larson. Andrew, with the dream world work and the electrical field happening around us, will other realms, Akashic records, come forth, blending, merging with my current Akashic records? Per se, the blending of galactic memories, the hiccup, that hiccup to the surface.
All right, so read the question real slow again, and I'm gonna break up the answer.
Yeah, it was a really cool question. Okay, so let me again. Andrew, with the dream world work and the electrical field happening around us, will other realms, Akashic records, come forth
Pause,
blending slash
pause right there.
merging with my?
Okay, pause right there. The answer is yes and no. You have to be a signature frequency match for the bleed through to exist. Though bleed throughs exist around you all the time, and you're just not a signature frequency match to see it, do anything with it, touch it, etc. And when a bleed through does come through and you are a signature frequency match, you're a signature frequency match for a certain volume in fraud time before you're not a signature frequency match anymore. When you are a dreamtime entity who understands how to create the mind into the heart and heart into the intestinal tract into the dreaming vehicle, you can be a part of a bigger process of that. But it's still the higher soul who's interacting with what layers of other Akashic record bleed throughs are coming through, especially extra solar or extra galactic Akashic records. Because sometimes, you can have an Akashic record of one planet in that galaxy that can come to you, just one planet, or an entire galaxies of records come to you.
Okay, so then the next part would be merging with my current Akashic records, and then per se, the blending of galactic memories that hiccup to the surface.
Okay, so what that next part of the question is, things that spur our species along into greater consciousness evolution, the stuff the Matrix can never truly get rid of, that constantly hiccup and bring back old subject matters for new generations to think about. Yes, that is going on, and this is why the galactic perspective is now coming out into our public awareness, and also why the controllers waited to the end to industrialize us and give us internet and television, because they knew that they could create enough distraction in the first 100 years that we would never be able to find the needle in the haystack.
Yes. And that would also then be kind of like when we were talking about the timeline showing themselves, the end and the beginnings, and how they became, and seeing all the differences. That's also the same perspective again, once again.
And there are certain people in a hierarchical pecking order that are connecting to these bleed throughs, such as what Moji was saying before. She is one of those people that's, because of how the system exchanged karma with her over many millions of years, she's at the front of that line there, as me and many others that have made that choice to be at the front of that line, knowing full well we can go no further until we take care of those at the back.
That's right, and that's always been the way. And I think that's a good way to be, because we are all connected.
Oh, absolutely. So connected that we are interconnected in all ways.
Yeah. And next question from Michelle Romano. Can I tell my story to the ocean? I live in an apartment building, no access to fire pit, nor do I know where I can make one legally. It's like everything is banned in NJ. Is that New Jersey?
In New Jersey.
New Jersey.
The big answer is you're just not trying hard enough.
If so, I'm at a shore tomorrow morning.
Let me answer this. Just because something says you can't have a fire doesn't mean you can't do it. You can have a fire anywhere you want if you really make the time to make sure it's safe. It's done all the time. The homeless people do it all the time. You are creating rules that you have to let go. Now, can you tell your story by the ocean? The answer is yes. How truly private are you going to be where you are? And if you are truly private where you are, you could have a little stick fire that's like this, no problem at all. You have to change your rules. And I cannot tell you how many people tell me they just can't have a fire. I don't believe you. It's so easy to have a fire, even in your own home. Okay? They're gas grills. There are other things that you can use. You just have to allow your mind to make it sacred. And this is where so many people make these limitations for themselves. I'm not putting you down. I'm helping many others who are in the exact same scenario. So
Well,
can you use the ocean? Yes. How truly sacred is it? If it's truly alone and by yourself, you can have a little fire there. It's the projections that are coming at you that are stopping you from seeing how to do it.
okay, next question here. I mean, also it's I know I also have to being in the city sometimes that um it is really difficult unless you've like worked with people that have got all these like genius ideas of how you can make a fire, because sometimes it's really hard to think of sacred fire and then look at your oven where there's a gas light. Okay, so I don't think it's that people aren't trying. I just think that the way of being is so ingrained that when one thinks about a sacred fire, one thinks of being outside and having logs and woods and wanting to do it right. So sometimes that perspective of actually being able to make a fire in a house, like through that, it just doesn't come into your head. Do you see what I mean? It's not like they don't want to. I think sometimes it's not a perspective that's even been looked at.
Correct.
Well, I've
Because
noticed that as well many times.
their sight was in a different direction.
Exactly.
Why I don't commonly teach to go to the water and do it, because water has a very different energy. Water is not burning away the energy that you're trying to get rid of. You're polluting into that water. It's unfortunate, but water is not the same element as fire. I'm a fire shaman. I'm the one teaching that. So if people want to go into water shamanism, there's a whole different layer of expression that you have, because that water is going to retain it, and everything that lives in that water is going to retain it, which puts you a part of a whole different dreaming system of your energy to get released from. I really encourage that person to truly look how they can make a fire. You're in New Jersey. They have parks that are everywhere that have grills at them that people can cook hot dogs on 4th of July. You can do it right then and there. Grab some twigs and put a hot dog on there, and no one's going to say anything to you. That exists all over the world where there are parks, as well as buying a little grill that has some twigs and stuff in it and pretend like you're cooking. No one's going to care. It's done all the time. It's that projection from the system that stops you from even seeing the most simplistic way of, hey, I can cook a hot dog, versus making it a sacred fire. Same thing.
So we have the next question from Ian. Regarding the information overlay broadcasted to Earth from Saturn via the moon, is this amplified during the quarter days?
No. Saturn has nothing to do with the moon. And the moon itself has its own broadcast frequency from its own source creational energies. Saturn broadcasts directly to the sacred geometry broadcast satellites that are in the exterior orbits. And this is also what creates the cloaking field around Earth, so other timeline viewings and sentients and entities can't actually view the planet while it's inside the galactic ascension. And just the big game that they play of who can see Earth and who can't. So no, Saturn has nothing to do with the moon. The moon is on a whole different layer of frequency now. All the beings that were on the moon have been, let's just say, neutralized to a point where they can no longer directly affect our reality without severely hampering, altering, or destroying their own reality.
Okay. And the next question is from Andrea Spataru. Hi, Andrea. How are you? Lovely to see your question here. And her question is, I wish to understand more about the alchemical sacred union of fire and water. How powerful is this combination, union? Love you, Andrea.
All right, so two elements. I think you got to mute there. So you're mixing two elements there, and you have to understand when you're mixing two elements, you have two different sources of energy to pay attention to. When you're coming to your sacred fire for the first time, you don't want two energies, you want one. You need to learn how to fully use the one element before you learn another element. When you were 9 years old and you started shaman school, which most people out there didn't, and if you did, you would learn one element one year, one element the next year, one element the next year, and one element the next year, and every year you would specialize in one element, and at the end of the year you'd move to the next element. So every 4 years, be 4 different elements. For people to start with fire, it's to get to the grounding, to get to the burning away of the dense energy that's being projected at you, so that you can create the co-creation with the higher source of light, and instant frequencies are there. Does it mean you can do it with, you can't do it with the other ones? You can. You must just take the active effort and time to do that. Are you a wind chaser? Is that what you want to do for your spiritual expression and the power of the wind, and only when the wind is on? Or the power of putting going to the fire, or the power of the water? So if people want to begin to mix those two, I highly advise that you put a pause on it. Why? You have to learn the fire. You have to learn to stoke the coals. You have to know when there's an energy coming out of you that just needs that fire and not water. There may come a certain form of conversation that can only be said to a fire, because you don't want to pollute the water, because the fire's job is transformation, transformation. Now, water. When you mix fire and water, you are creating steam, which is the highest form of spiritual locomotion. When you have fire and it rains, you are mixing fire and water. So there is where you can begin to experiment. When a thunderstorm is coming and you know rain is coming, or just rain is coming, go out and have a fire and see if you can keep it going in the rain. How those two energies mix. What types of spiritual questions come up to you? How easily is your story told to the fire during that moment? I know, Natalie, you and I had a very special fire where it was a light drizzle, and we had 4 ceremonial fires going, and it just turned everything to steam.
That was amazing. And the shapes, the sound of the steam, the way the shapes of the steam took density within the different areas of the fire. I mean, that was, and then you started, doing what you do best, and you were just speaking all of these words, and I was actually watching you work with those two elements, because obviously you knew how to separate them but bring them together. And when that steam started to do its thing, it was almost mesmerizing. It was almost like you were making the steam dance with the words you were saying. It was like taking on these different tendrils of shapes and ways of going up. That was quite spectacular to see.
Yeah, because
and extremely powerful.
Yeah, the particular grid was very special. I'm getting that both from you.
Yeah, no, that was extraordinary, Andrew. Extraordinary.
So let's move on.
Okay, yes, I have the next question is from Hello all. After an emotional time, how can one reground and stay grounded throughout the day? I love looking for synchronicities all day, but I feel I might not be as present as I should with my third body skin suit. I also wonder how to clear old patterns and emotion in life. Powerful question.
Yeah. That is one of those classic questions. So how does one ground? If you think you're ungrounded at all, you have to start creating grounding exercise. Well, the first thing is take those shoes off. Take off them rubber-soled shoes and walk around your house barefoot. Second process, to get a bag of pink Himalayan salt, a little bit of sage, and a little bit of a silver ring, silver, salt, and sage. You put that into a bag and you put that over your tailbone. And you will discover right away if you are grounded barefoot with a bag of salt on your tailbone, because it'll create a cranial pulse that will exchange neutralizing energy along with the sage that will begin to eject an exterior entity energy that will allow you to show you as your authentic self sitting in the seat of your power, which is your heart. The tailbone is the reflection of the heart. Now, our brain, just as I was saying earlier, started as a heart. Well, you put that next bag of salt with the silver and the sage over the back of your head, so there's one on your tailbone and one on the back of your neck, and you go about that all day long. And if you can't be barefoot, put your shoes back on, and you can easily hide under your clothes this bag of salt and silver and sage. Easily hide it so no one will see it, so that it's on your frequency the whole day, so that when you get home from work or whatever it is that keeping you ungrounded, you take it off and go, wow, how does my body feel? And actually write it down. Massage over those areas to feel how the difference in densities of energies are. Now, going further, finding other grounding things and synchronicities, that's one thing. Predicting synchronicities, that's where you know you're really doing the hard work. When you know it's coming, you live by it, because every day is the miracle of no time, and that you can manifest with the system. This is where those internal dialogues to an exterior mystical system creates the inter-co-creation that allows synchronicities to create and manifest directly in front of you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Mike Vowles poses a really good question. I like this because now we're really getting into the alchemy. And he says, I've heard you mention saving a piece of coal from each fire to bring to the next ceremony. I would like to do this, but was wondering if there are any extra things to know in working in that manner.
Very good question.
Very good question. Yep.
So you got to mute Nat, because there we go. So anytime you have a sacred ceremony, you want to save coals from every ceremony, so that when you go and start your next ceremony, you are taking all of the prayers that you did then, all of the work that you did then in a sacred manner, and adding it to this sacred fire. So it is a continuous set of fires that has an unbroken chain of sacredness to sacredness to sacredness, because this being means that. There are other times where you want to take a coal out from this super powerful one and make it into a master bag, where you may have 9 or 10 or 12 fires spread over a couple months that are all, wow, kick-ass fires, and a couple coals from each one, so that at the equinox or the solstice, you have an even bigger kick-ass communication and connection, because you're taking those individual coals in moments of time and making something super sacred, where you're allowing more and more of the alchemy of who you are to come in through the coals, through the starting of that fire, and the whiteness of that heat that immediately glows.
You're personalizing it more and more to your authentic signature frequency, and letting the coals help you regain more and more of your strength in that authentic signature frequency that you are. I've seen,
as well as connecting all the moments.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Okay, Maria Gill has a question. When you say close the fire before you leave the fire ceremony, how exactly do you do that?
You end the ceremony. You say, I now take this moment to end this ceremony and allow all of the angelic energies to come forth and to close down this ceremony. All of the energies that I put into the fire, all the energies that I put there, are now coming to an end point, and we are suspending our no time and entering fraud time again, with the intention of coming back as a sacred being, re-entering no time. So you have to have a form of a prayer that ends the ceremony, that honors what you went through. For some people, this is where they spend the last 20 or 30 or 40 minutes of the fire writing down what happened the first hour or two. And there are others that you just rode along and were happy and beautiful, and when it's time to go, it's time to go. They end the fire, and when it's all done, you allow it to either naturally go out by itself, if you can, just push it all into the center and put some dirt over top of it. If you're going to have to suddenly end it because life calls, you've had water pre-prepared that's in a bucket that puts it out, that turns it to steam. If that one bucket doesn't put out, that's fine. That's the symbology that you're ending the sacredness of that fire, so that nothing, when you are away from it, can use your sacred fire against you.
Great. That's good. I have another question from Jay Levert. That's actually a really good question and worth contemplation. And that's, does the predominant element of the individual have a certain influence over the fire, For example, fire plus fire, water plus fire, etc. My element is fire, so I'm wondering if that intensifies the ceremonies.
It
That is
can.
interesting because I know your element also is fire, Andrew.
Yes. It can greatly enhance it many, many fold. It can also dampen it. There are certain fires where, let's just say, they're meant to be very calming. And when you add certain kinds of fire sources, because the wood that was being, particular style of wood that's being burned is very dense, your fire ceremony, your fire sign can make something that is supposed to be a very relaxing and relieving ceremonial fire that brings healing, brings a lot of vision that limits the healing and just adds to the vision. And then sometimes you need the healing more than the vision. So it's a fine line of understanding your personal controls. And if you know you're coming into a ceremony, you can turn off your external, your sign of fire energy and say, hey, for this ceremonial fire, I want to just feel this element of fire. All of my other bonus fire signs, I ask that they be put on pause to the very edges of my aura, so creation, inspiration, and dreams is in circular format within this sacred fire.
Beautiful, beautiful. We have a question from Tracy. How do pets, for example, cats, help us grounding? Do they help us to connect to Mother Earth elements too?
Absolutely they do. Unless the cat is haunted or the dog is haunted or you're haunted, and then you're connecting into something else's source of imagery. So when a cat comes and sits on you, it is trying to ground you. If your cats are very close to you, that means you have an extra entity there, which is the cat, who can see into the unseen worlds. And if you take the time to learn how to speak to the cat, it'll tell you when you're ungrounded, because it'll come up to you and start purring at you, the natural resonant frequency of Earth, which is 432 hertz. Dogs do the same thing by barking outside, making spiritual resonance energy. And if that dog barking really annoys you, you're not paying attention to what the dog is doing. If it's a bird in a caw, all of those things are part of the synchronistic parts of nature. And when you include all of energy's life forms, including your pets, they are part of your interconnectedness, and you discover them in your dreams. How many people have dreamed of their pets, having a dream with their dog running after a rabbit, or playing frisbee with your dog, or riding your horse, so on and so forth. They're all very grounding, unless the animal itself is ungrounded. But pets are our reflection. So you must understand, if your pet's looking sick, it's taking something on from you. And it's maybe not necessarily that you take it back, but you help the dog release it. So there's a continuous creation. You heal me, I heal you.
Okay, and now there are two questions that are quite similar. So one is a question from Makiko Fliss, and the other one is a question from Ya. I'm going to read both of these questions, and then they're both basically asking the same kind of thing.
Okay, let's split the last question.
Okay, and that's why I wanted to put the two together, because I knew we were coming to the time point, and these are both really similar. So let me read both, and then you'll see what I mean. Makiko, I would like to seek revocation and invocation that can be telling fire to transport intimate interactions that may not be completely spiritual or happened while not fully conscious into sacred past, present, and future with beings here in 3D and other dimensions. Now, Ya is writing, I'm facilitating a fire ceremony for 10 women I work with. We have a great sisterhood and get together twice a year. They are bringing their written things they would like to release and transmute into the fire. Many of them are not spiritual. You see what I'm saying? They're both asking about putting things that are not completely spiritual, but are excited about the event. Do you have any advice for me, for instance, to protect the area or women in the ceremony?
Well, are you doing it as your personal Equinox ceremony? That's the first thing. And if so, you have to mute Nat. If so, you have to make them separate. You need to do on your own personal Equinox ceremony and then do another one with them, because you have made that conscious application of the sacred, meaning you're doing it for yourself. If there are other beings who are taking it as sacred as you, and you have others that are not, You must make a different form of ritual, a different form of ceremony, one that is a lot less energy, that does not bring in a high frequency of energy that activates their ghosts so that their ghosts jump onto you. This is the nature of creating the spiritual cord of equity, the spiritual connection to the fire, so that all of that excess energy that's being projected at you is burnt away, so that it's not in your frequency, that the fire is creating this golden tube of protection because you've empowered everything within it. Now, for those people that are coming to the fire and want to put their stuff in it, that has been done since time immemorial. So that's the tough part about being a shaman, is being prepared for what comes to your sacred fire, who you invite. So if you're one of those people that's going to be inviting more types of people to come in and be a part of it, give that intention to that fire. So if something is non-sacred and put into the fire, maybe it did need to be sacred, and that person, by putting in the fire, made it sacred for themselves, and from that point on, from the fire, they start taking something sacred. They've learned from that fire. This is the next level of you become a shaman. After a while, you can put stuff into the fire that other people come up and just get a download of. Not an impressed domination control, but they've learned something from that element of fire because you've taught it, and that fire is still going to teach everyone else that comes to it at the level that that person's ready to learn at. That's why many times ceremonial fires need more than one shaman, sometimes 3 or 4. One that's looking at one energy, one that's looking at another, one that's looking at them all, or all the energies. You have to begin to work in community and unity, and yes, we need other people to come to these fires so more and more people take it sacred. So with it, go ahead.
I'm waiting on you. What would you like to do?
No, so that's pretty much the last question. And I want to thank everyone that's been out there and that has been a little tough on the energies here. I want to thank everyone that's been a part of the Equinox and the Solstice event, and remind everyone that Thursday, the 31st of March, at 4 p.m. PST, there'll be the next Akashic broadcast, and then Monday, April the 4th, at 1 p.m. PST, right after the radio show, there'll be another where we've taken a lot of the concepts that we talked in for the first meditation and the first two, as well as what we talked about in this Equinox, and we'll transfer it over, and we're going to have another great broadcast. Natalie, thanks a lot for being to the show. Any last words you want to say?
All I can say is the last 2 sessions you did with those meditations, the way you're building us up, if you listen to those and keep listening to them, it's almost like Andrew is giving you keys for the next phase that is coming. And I've noticed that a lot of the things that I've been working on myself and things that have come up in cases that I'm working with, those understandings that he relayed to us in that frequency, they really sat, and I didn't understand how much they sat until I started to do the work, and stuff was just coming up where I'm like, yes, this is exactly what we need to do with that consciousness. And it was through doing that procedure and being in that frequency again and again that really did it for me. So if you guys have not listened to it yet, please do go and listen to it. It might just make these times a little bit easier for you.
Thanks a lot, Natalie. That was special. All right, everybody. We'll catch you on Thursday the 31st. Thanks a lot, everyone.